Good evening and welcome to our members' surgery. My name is Scott Haslam, President of the Leeds #1 Amalgamated Branch, and I'm glad to say we've got a special guest, no other than Davie Robertson. Hi, Davie.
Hi, Scott. I'm delighted to be able to join you.
Excellent. Well, tonight's session, we're going to be talking about two areas. One is the raw mail automation, particularly on the back of the Northwest Hub going live and actually commissioning the machine to be processing the items. What implications that will have, and obviously this will have a ripple effect when the second and the third one open in future years. But also, really a good news story is the heavy goods shortages in the UK has really impacted not just raw mail but everybody. But Davie certainly in the department managed to secure a fantastic deal with the business, and we'll be also talking about that tonight. So in the interim, if you can share, tag whoever to try and maximize the interest in the session, subscribe, like, follow all the social media streams, that'd be great. And obviously if you're listening on the podcast thereafter, then please subscribe to that as well. So I think if we can kick off with sort of the automation side to start with, and sort of give a bit of a backstory on that, Davie, and where we are with it, and sort of cover off a little bit on the joint statement that were released this week on the framework. So over to you, mate.
Yeah, thanks, Scott. And good evening, everybody. And listen, this is especially, predominantly, I would imagine the initial viewers will be in the branch area in the north of the country. So clearly, this is something of real importance to you. You do have skin in the game, so to speak. And there's a couple of things that we've known were always going to be part of the plan. One is the business. At the time that we did the Pathway to Change agreement, we absolutely knew that there would be two parcel hubs, and we knew that because they'd already started building them. The Northwest Hub, which will be the first to open, was at an advanced stage, and it is now sort of nearing completion, and will go operational in May next year. That will be followed a year later, or thereabouts, by the Midland Hub, which is a super-sized site. It's probably about twice the size of the Northwest Hub. It's in the general vicinity of NDC, and it will open about a year later. So spring 23, the Midland Hub will open. There's then some debate about a third hub, whether there will be one and where it will be, but that would be probably a couple of years after that at the very earliest, because it takes about 5 years to commission a site from planning to deployment, and the business haven't settled on a third hub yet. But certainly the first two are absolutely a reality, and they are significant sites. There's something that we've not seen in Royal Mail before. Obviously, we've got parcel hubs and parcel force, but these ones in Royal Mail are kind of state-of-the-art facilities, and will have the capability of processing a lot of parcels. The Northwest Hub will have the capability of processing around 40k an hour. Now, it still remains to be seen how quickly it can hit those levels, but the business case is for 40,000 items an hour. The Midlands Hub is way more than that. The Midlands Hub, when it opens, will be able to do significantly more. It's about 60,000 items an hour. So these are serious facilities, and will consume quite a large element of work. Now, we are in a growth environment. The post-COVID period, we have seen a huge rise in the number of parcels that Royal Mail handles. So they launch at the best possible time for us, so to speak, in as much as it would be serious if we were launching parcel hubs when traffic was declining, but parcel traffic is continuing to grow, which is excellent. But clearly, if we've got a hub that opens next May that will consume or could consume work in the region of 40,000 items an hour, and those items currently sit within the existing processing network, then clearly we have to have a process for managing the transfer of workload to the hub. And that's what this week's joint statement was about, Scott. It's about ensuring that we have processes in place to conduct discussions around the movement of workload and to ensure that the people's plan, and the people's plan is all important here, but what we've tried to ensure is that the people's plan sets the agenda rather than workload moving and defining the people's plan. So some of this will be difficult, but I suppose on the plus side, you only fill the hub once. After you fill the hub, all growth then falls back onto the existing network. So in the longer term, we are as confident as you can be, so subject and conditional that there's not a collapse in the parcels market. But if the long range forecasts that the business are working to, which is the parcel traffic will continue to grow year on year by about 6%, could be slightly more, could be slightly less, but about 6% year on year, then over a 10-year period, then we will still hit a point where mail centres are bulking out, even with 2 or 3 hubs, and even with increased parcel automation across the mail centre network. So our current view is the mail centre network is secure, but that doesn't mean that there won't be a workload shock when the hub opens, and that's the piece we need to manage. We need to manage through. The business will obviously want to maximise the workload at the hub, but clearly our priority is we have a number of priorities. One, we have to make sure that the new hub does allow the business to grow and does allow the business to perhaps develop new products and services. But it's imperative to us that we don't open a hub and tear the heart out of existing facilities. So managing that change in a way that supports the current facilities is imperative, and that's what the joint statement's about. So it's about making sure we have the proper structures, making sure that we have mail centre catchment area working groups that will deal with the transition of work and make sure that we retain manageable workload at the mail centres and the RDCs. It will mean that that we are able to create people's plans that protect our people, to make sure that we have acceptable duty patterns and make sure that we have earnings packages in the existing sites, and that the movement of work to the parcel hub is manageable and is equitable and is a mutual interest solution. So that's what the joint statement is about. And we've launched it, or the joint statement's been circulated. I've spent most of today with sort of members of my team, in the mail centre environment, Steve Halliwell, Mahmood, from the RDCs, Katrina, and from the distribution perspective, Shelley. They've all been with me today, where we've been talking to the business about the data packs that will go out and about how we start to engage with you and how we support the reps and members through the transition. As it's looking just now, the business is preparing data packs for release, and we're looking to possibly, in all likelihood, we will have a reps briefing probably next Friday. We're looking at for some kind of briefing with the reps from the catchment area sites, and to start that process and to kick off the engagement. Now, some of it may be difficult, and look, there's no point in hiding from it. I think people are aware. YDC in particular, there is a workload challenge at YDC, And we've asked the business to look at workload that they can move from other sites to YDC to mitigate that workload impact. And they are seriously looking at that. And some of that might be workload that happens in places like Atherstone or other outhouses that could move to YDC to create workload. We are looking at some of the high volume tracked returns that currently get done in the additional shed in the northwest to move to YDC, and we're looking at a range of options. But the bottom line is we absolutely we don't represent bricks and mortar. Might be secure, but we don't represent bricks and mortar. We represent living, breathing people, and our priority is to make sure that in the period where there is the chance of workload shock, that we have a resourcing solution and a workload solution that gives the business an acceptable degree of efficiency at the new hub in Warrington, but absolutely supports our members and ensures that our members retain manageable workload, sufficient workload, have proper duty patterns and proper earnings packages. So it's going to be a big change. It is a big change. It's I suppose if you put it in terms of scale, it's not as big as mail centre rationalisation that we went through a number of years ago, where people tend to forget we closed 32 mail centres in 5 years. We went from 69 mail centres down to 37. It's not on that scale, but it is on a scale we haven't seen for a number of years, because it is about opening new facilities and integrating them into the network. On the driving side, Scott, and I think you're probably aware of this, it's not a replacement network, it's an additional network. So actually on the driving side, it's likely to produce an increase in workload, which again, we'll have to deal with, but I suppose it's a more palatable scenario. But look, we think we've got the ability to deal with it. In fact, I'm 100% sure we've got the ability to deal with it, and I'm 100% sure that we've got the structures to deal with it. So it's important now that we get into that discussion, because next May is when they open the door on that site. It's already open for cross-docking, but not as a hub. But the business's view is it will open as a hub in May next year. It won't open at 100%. They don't switch it on and it's doing 40k an hour. They hope to ramp the workload up over the 6 months following that, sort of running into peak 23. And we need to be in a position to deal with that at all of the affected sites. And for the Northwest Hub, for anybody watching, the affected sites are obviously Northwest RDC, which will be subsumed into the new hub, YDC, which is the only other RDC directly affected by the Northwest Hub. SDC, the other one in the north, is too far away to be a feeder to Northwest. So YDC is affected, and then mail centres. And if we work out from the Northwest Hub, Warrington Mail Centre, which is almost directly across the road, and then I suppose Preston, Chester, Manchester mail centres in the northwest, Leeds, which is obviously of interest to your branch, Sheffield, Tyneside, which is a bit further away but is in the catchment area, and then I suppose the one that came out of left field and surprised us all because it only came in at the last minute is Wolverhampton or Northwest Midlands, which I think we all probably thought would be a feeder site for the Midland Hub, but it's not. It's going to be for the Northwest. The good news is, I suppose, if you have your glass half full, is anybody who's a catchment area site or a feeder site for the Northwest Hub won't also be a feeder site for the Midlands Hub. So the impact we're dealing with now on outward is the impact. After that, all growth will start to fall back on the mail centres or the RDCs. So, but we still have a job to do with regards to the workload impact of the opening of the hub. and that's what we're determined to do, Scott. So that's the kind of overview on the hubs. There are other tunes afloat, of course. Simon Thompson, the new CEO, you'll all be aware, is very keen on automation, and not just in the parcel hubs. So we've also got mail centre automation being rolled out. Tyneside is currently, all the sort of publicity just now is around Tyneside. But Northwest Midlands, who are also in the catchment area, and Chester, who are also in the catchment area, are on the list for PSMs, which means to some degree there's two elements to deal with. So not only the work that will go to the hub, but also the manual work that will become automated on site. So, there's quite a lot going on. The business wants to get to 90% automation of parcel products over the next few years. And that's the road we're on. So it's a good news story, especially in a growth environment, but it doesn't mean that there's not some difficult issues to deal with, because parcel automation in mail centres, it's a funny debate we have, and I have the debate with a lot of mail centre reps, a lot of area processing reps. Everybody's very keen to have a PSM because they believe it absolutely secures the future of the site. I don't think any sites are under risk anyway, but I understand that debate. But having a PSM, the PSM automates work that in a lot of cases we manually sort, so it does affect workload. So there's a lot there, Scott. We're at the start of that journey now, and certainly for the Northwest Hub, we need to really seriously get into solution mode now, and that's what the joint statement's about. So I'm sure there's questions. I'll pause there.
Cool, thank you. I think that's quite a thorough overview, to be fair. There is a question from someone called Kath Hodgson, and I'm sort of going to tie it into something I picked up in the joint statement specifically. What she asks is, how is it going to impact on sorting officers? Now, I'm presuming what she means is sorting officers twofold. Maybe the delivery office or an MPU type or an LAT unit or anything like that. But then it could also be the actual sorting within the mail centre. So one statement I picked up, one sentence in the statement, it said that the hubs are primarily designed to focus on format 3.4 and tracked items. So you've already touched on sort of tracked items and what that sort of means, but maybe I'm being a bit simple, but I'm not quite sure I know what format 3.4 is. Maybe it's a processing bit, but so
it's the size of the parcel. It's the size of the parcel, Scott. 3 and 4 is pretty much above shoebox size. So it's the size and dimensions of the items. So in mail centres, the PSMs, well, they don't even do, well, they possibly do 1 and 2. So I don't know, CDs, does anybody still buy CDs? I don't know. A CD, a DVD, does anybody still buy them? Blu-ray, that kind of size, up to shoebox size or smaller. The PSMs don't really handle much of format 3, but when we talk about 3 or 4, it's bigger items.
Excellent. So she's clarified as Kath, it's from a deliveries perspective. So another part of the statement that I picked up on was that it says inward workload will be affected at all mail centres due to the increased hub capacity to provide direct sort selections, which will only require cross-docking in the inward mail centre. So presumably that'll take a chunk of the manual work within a mail centre. So in terms of a delivery aspect, it'll be cross-docked in a mail centre like it does in an RDC currently for the national network, straight into the delivery office, but there'll still be that element of sort in the delivery office. Am I right in that understanding?
Yeah. So on the outward workload, the only sites, so the outward workload, there'll be no effect on delivery at all. So the mail centres and RDCs in the catchment area, elements of their outward workload will move to the hub, and that's the bit that we have to deal with specifically. Inward workload, there is the potential for an effect on every mail centre. So now I will say there is an outstanding issue here that still needs to be resolved. But in general terms, the Northwest Hub can sort to. There's two machines in the Northwest Hub. One for large items, format 3 and 4. One for smaller items, format 1 or 2. One of the machines has up to 500 selections. One has up to 400. So let's work from the spec they're working is from the lower of the two. So if you said that they have the ability to sort to 400 selections, then we need to give a selection to every mail centre and every other RDC. So it leaves about 350 potential selections. So the business are of a view that they could say they could direct sort to 350 destinations other than mail centres. So arguably DOs, sorting offices, whatever you want to call it. Now, there is an outstanding issue. The business have got a view about a hub approach where they have a view about 350 hubs. There would then be, the positions where dedicated parcel routes ran from. We don't support that position. Our view is if they're going to do it, it should be the 350 offices, biggest offices by volume. But what that does mean, whatever way it is, if they move to 350 direct selections, then every parcel that currently goes through an inward mail centre will still go through an inward mail centre, but the elements that are in those 350 would already be sorted to DO level, so not to walk level, but to DO level. So they would come in purely for cross-docking at the inward mail centre. The delivery office wouldn't see much of a difference in that scenario. It would still come into them in a York, which they would then have to sort to walk level. So the impact, what will the delivery offices see if it's the CWU answer, which is every DO will handle all of its own parcel work, then the DOs shouldn't see much difference, other than there could be differences at what time things arrive, but the work should come in pretty much the same state as it does now. But inward mail centre, as you say, some of there'll be less items, or some items that come in. It's not a huge percentage of the work. It's quite a small percentage of the work, but some of the work would only require cross-docking on the inward phase rather than full sortation.
Excellent. And in some regards, you sort of lose work area in one aspect of the mail centre, and then you gain it in another, wouldn't you? Because instead of doing some sortation, there's going to be some movie of Yorks and unloading and loading and such. Yeah. So a couple of sort of slightly separate questions have just come in. It might be appropriate to cover them off. So Dave Johnson asks about sort of people who cut it off actually. But traditionally, folk who have broken on deliveries is always, but basically people who need adjustments, maybe covered under the Equality Act or whatever, have sometimes been redeployed into the mail centres in effect. Now, what he's asking is what's the view about the automation and what impact that might have on scoping people to move into a mail centre on adjustment basis?
Well, I suppose there's two ways to look at it. Automation, so per se, whether it's in a mail centre, whether it's in a hub, automation reduces the amount of manual work. So effectively, to some degree, I suppose, more jobs within the mail centre become, suitable for anybody who requires some relief, I suppose. There is no two ways about it. Over a longer period of time, the expectation is that the mail centres will end up with more parcel work than they've currently got. Letter work is still declining, but it's declining more slowly than previously. There is a view that it may plateau at some point, but I think that's a few years out and it's not certain. But certainly the rate of decline has shallowed. So we do still have significant amounts of letter workload that will remain. The parcel work is continuing to grow. Clearly, if you're in a catchment area just now, we do face a shock. But if we said, and these figures are indicative, but let's say, and by the way, mail centres, even at the start, will retain the vast majority of their parcel work. So let's say a worst case scenario was a mail centre lost around 18% of their parcel work. Then arguably, if we grow at 6% a year, in 3 years, you've made it back. In 4 years, you've got more than you started with. In 5 years, you might be busting out. So the longer term picture remains rosy, but there is a workload shock. Now, we want to, obviously, it's what we do as a trade union, we want to, as best as we can, look after the needs and aspirations of all our members. In the short term, I think, with the workload shock, we are going to have to prioritise looking after our members who are currently in the mail centres, because, in some cases, the figures suggest that there could be a head count reduction. Now, that means we'll have to look at the full range of resourcing options. It might mean, VR hoves into view in some places, and I'm pretty sure I'll get killed in the stampede when if VR is offered, because that's usually the pattern. But don't forget, the parcel hubs in and of themselves, will create a lot of jobs. They will create a good number of jobs. We're also looking at a scenario, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, where the number of jobs in driving is increasing at a time when it's difficult to get drivers. So, maybe people who are finding it difficult in delivery might get the opportunity to go driving, and I'm very hopeful quite a number of you will get the opportunity to go driving if you fancy it over the next few months. So we always want to give people an opportunity to progress their career, or to look for a more acceptable option if they're finding their current role difficult. But automation is reducing the amount of manual work, so we're going to have to look at it in the round and find a solution that works for us all, across the processing function, dealing with parcel growth and the increase in automation. So there's no easy answer, Scott, but look, we'll never step back from looking after our members, and we'll always try to find solutions where people are struggling with their current workload.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of actually more relevant questions come through. And to be fair, Dave's also made a valid point about Terry. He's on a different channel, a competitor channel, if you like, from Raw Mail's marketplace, and he says that this is much better. So you've got kudos from DJ there, Davie. Right. So
I didn't realise I was cutting the governor's grass right enough. I thought it was tomorrow he was on.
Well, apparently 5:15 today with the CEO, but like I say, this is more bread and butter stuff, I think, rather than that. But anyway, so we've got a couple of queries. So an interesting point from Steve Coombs. He said, will the Northwest Midlands Hub have any effect on the air network, or will the air network remain as is?
Coombs is taking a liberty here, because he's already asked me this question on a number of occasions. Steve, just to reiterate, the current plan is that the parcel hubs, and not specifically the opening of the parcel hubs, probably more related to the Midland Hub, where the Midland Hub is, and I think people are aware, and if you're not, I'm about to tell you, the Midland Hub is going to have a rail terminal attached to it. And that rail terminal will obviously, move work off of the road and onto the rail. And the business's view is that won't allow them to take flights out, but it probably will stop them having to put additional flights in. Because, let's be honest, flights are only in because of service specification. If we're going to run, if we are running a Track 24 product that you can post and asking for a friend, that you can that you can post in Aberdeen and one delivered in Exeter for Steve the next day, then to be honest, we have to fly it. Now, by putting in extra rail links, which are quicker and move more volume, the business believe that they'll be able to take, they'll not take work out of the air, but it'll stop them having to put more work onto the air network, which comes at huge cost. I mean, and it absolutely does. So as it stands just now, Steve, and you know this because we you know, I think you dealt with this with me a couple of years ago. The reason the air network review stopped is we can't take any more flights out without putting delivery start times back. And I think if Mr. Balsh was on the call, he'd be telling you that we're not in the market for putting delivery start times back. So we can't take any more flights out. But what the Midland Hub will potentially allow is the business not to put more flights in. So that's the current position, Steve.
Yeah. So I think you kind of touched on there about what Stuart had asked, and what he were asking is about would they be looking at some later arrivals as a consequence of the open, and what you've just said there pretty much is there shouldn't be any implications there on deliveries, Davie. Is that about right?
Well, yeah, I'll just try and dig it out. So I'll just check exactly what it said. But the pathway to change actually sort of set a parameter within the sort of pipeline review, and one of those parameters was almost ensuring that the current sort of service spec was maintained. So no, we're not in the market of moving to the sort of old tired Royal Mail argument, you know, the RICO argument of let's just do it later and cheaper. If you're putting in a parcel hub and you're saying it can sort 40,000 items an hour, then our argument is, well, you must be able to get it there earlier then. So we're not in the market of going later. We would actually like to get some of the volume in earlier, connect more of it with core. But no, we're not really. Not really. We're not open to deferring the network. So no, we would expect items to reach core in line with current spec.
Excellent. So there's one last element which will tie us nicely into the I suppose the main event of the show, or the episode, and it talks about the growth, which you've already covered off with driving, and there'll be implications on duty sets perhaps, or workloads in different units to move that traffic around, and that'll be covered off under the normal sort of processes. And actually it does cite that the impact in area distribution or through pad revisions and all this activity will be all linked into this revision for next year. So that pretty much confirms, as does the pathway to change confirm, that there's going to be a revision for the network and pad next year. But there's this last little comment that I just want to pick up on and just clarify. It says that where additional professional driver resources required, driver training / progression opportunities may be considered as part of the agreed people's plans. Now, is that in addition to the next session, this driver academy, or is that part of the driver academy, Davie?
Well, to be honest, we made the agreement on the Northwest before we made the agreement on driver academy, so they could become linked. But to be honest, I think they also could sit separately. I mean, my view would be, if we have in any site a headcount reduction, so and I'm not going to sit here and say to people that's not likely. There may well be a headcount reduction. Now, whether that's a material headcount reduction or not remains to be seen. The business will make the usual arguments about, we're still using lots of agency, blah, 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 whatever. If we have a material headcount reduction, then there's two options, isn't there? We can break those options down into a million subparts, but there's two options. We redeploy people, or we allow them to exit the business with grace and a lump of money, hopefully. So that's the two options. One of the redeployment options, in my view, could be a move to professional driving, and that might mean that on top of or concurrently to whatever we do with career path, it might be that some people, rather than leave the business, some people might say, actually, this could be an opportunity to go MGV driving, or it could be an opportunity to go LGV driving, and we would want that to be an option as part of the people's plans for the Northwest, and hence it's in there. The career path stuff, though, and the apprenticeship stuff, though, is on a scale that they may well, capture that constituency anyway. But I want people to have an opportunity, a real choice in what comes next for them. If their current role, doesn't look too palatable or is challenged, I want people to have a range of options, and going driving might be one of those options.
Well, I agree. And driving is a fantastic thing. It's something I've been doing for the last 10, 11 years, on and off, which ties us into, and to be fair, you were a driver, weren't you, Davie, many, many moons ago? Yeah. So this ties us into the new driver academy. So there's a nice there's always a nice introduction, isn't there, on these joint statements, but there's a key bit I thought I pulled out there, and it's sort of kudos really to the department in pushing forward the recruitment of the last 12 months. And what it does say is that we've managed to recruit over 600 LGV professional drivers through a mixture of internal, so massive growth there and upskilling from our members across the country, but also a massive drive in external into various sites. So 600, and I think YDC, where I'm based, I think we had 10% of those drivers. So significant growth, and I think we can probably take another 10%. So massive growth. So is that really being the big driver of this agreement, on the basis that there's a massive shortage and it's really hurting the company at peak?
Yeah, well, first thing to say is thank God we did embark on the recruitment exercises earlier in the year, because had we not recruited 670, I think we recruited 670. I think, to be honest, and I don't know whether you've experienced it, Scott, I think some of the external candidates we got and recruited, I think once Tesco started off on £1,000, I think some of them jumped ship and left again. A couple, not many, but I think 2 or 3, abandoned ship very early in the piece because somebody was throwing some cash about. So it was imperative that we did that. And look, I'm not going to sit here and say, we were visionary. I don't think we realised that there was going to be the driver crisis at that point. It'd be dead easy to say, we took the necessary steps. I think, it was as much luck as determination. But we have always wanted to get a proper recruitment in. We wanted to maximise the progression opportunities for our members. So about 670 places were recruited against. Only about a third of them, though, were internal, because we didn't have driver training. So it was people that had the licence. We got them the CPC, we got them the upskilling, but we weren't driver training. And that was the missing link for us. What we were continually saying to the business is, we have thousands, I believe, and judging by the response in the last couple of days, I think that's not wrong. We've got thousands of people in Royal Mail who want to go driving, who want to progress to professional driver grade. And through the year, we were saying, you have to use that opportunity. As the year dragged on, and the huge shortage of drivers, not just in Royal Mail, in the UK supply chain became, the size of the problem, became evident. Then we've been pressing that even harder, because the reality is, and the logic to us was, look, if you can't attract agency people, if you can't get them, if you can't even get contractors, then train the people we've got, because you can get them. They're there and they want to do it. So I'm absolutely delighted that we've got to a position where we've agreed a process that's got kind of 4 elements to it. One is fast track, and the fast track is to capture the people, because, you know, a lot of our members get fed up waiting, and that's disappointing. You know, it's disappointing that they had to feel that they were going to spend their own money to go and get trained, but some of them have. So if people have put themselves through their license, have got the necessary accreditation, and all they need now is their CPC and the opportunity. We've now agreed a fast track process to make sure that where we've got vacancies, or where at peak we need drivers, that they can get fast tracked through, that we can start to remove some of the artificial barriers that, to be honest, Royal Mail, not Royal Mail per se, Royal Mail management put in the way. You know, I've got a licence, Gov, and Scott's got a job for me at YDC. Can I go? No, sorry, mate, you can't go, because I don't have anybody to replace you in the delivery office. So we need to remove those kind of structural impediments that the business put in the way. And we've got a process now to do that. So that's excellent. Driver career path, which now is going to be ongoing. So it's not like we've done before. It's driver career path for 100 places, and then we'll come back and look in a couple of years. This will now be ongoing. But what the business is saying, in the first year, we can get a minimum, and they are saying it's a minimum of 500 people trained. That's not all to LGV. If people fancy going to MGV but not to LGV, then they'll have that opportunity. If we've got MGV people who want to go LGV, they'll have that opportunity. And we've got people who want to go straight to LGV, they'll get that opportunity as well. There will be there's always criteria, and the criteria is what's currently in agreements. So one, you have to be able to drive. So you have to have a car license. So unfortunately, if you don't have a car license just now, you won't be part of this initial tranche. It might be something we'll look at down the line. But if you've got a car license, you're in this window. You can apply. You can't have more than 6 points in your license, which is a standard recruitment criteria for Royal Mail. And there are the usual conduct and attendance. So it shouldn't deter many people, but I suppose if you are sitting on a suspended dismissal, then the business may take a view. But it is in line with current agreements. Other than that, you can apply. We've yet to determine where all the training places will be. They will be based on, we do want a geographic spread, so we don't want any part of the country excluded, but they will also be, weighted to some degree on where the resourcing shortfall is. But look, for the first time ever, we've recruited 600, nearly 700 drivers this year, and we're going to train another 500 in the next year. This is fantastic. This is something we've never seen before in the business. What an opportunity it is. For the apprentice thing, which is absolutely new, we have to work within the government criteria on what is an apprenticeship. And that's meant there's a couple of bits that people might find controversial. It is currently, it's very small numbers. We're almost testing the concept. It's 20 people nationally. So it's not a huge amount. It will only be open at this stage to external candidates. And it's a 13-month apprenticeship. That does include some classroom-based activity. It's not just driving, and it's not just Royal Mail workload. I haven't seen the final, or we haven't seen the final structure yet. That's still being worked on, but it will involve some educational pieces. It will, some college time or classroom time. But it will include the attainment of a C+E licence, and it will include apprenticeship pay, which will start at an apprenticeship level based on OPG pay, and then will progress through to an LGV apprenticeship rate. I think the feedback we're getting is once it reaches the LGV apprenticeship rate, then as apprentice pay, it's probably, the Carlsberg option. And once they've completed the apprenticeship successfully, they will get a job, because the government scheme absolutely dictates that they have to get a job. So they will get a job, progress to a professional driver role. It's new, it's something we're trying. Royal Mail contributes about 20 million quid a year to the apprenticeship fund, so it's quite right that they try and draw down on some of it, as they're doing in other parts of Royal Mail. But we do need to start looking at bringing younger people into the workforce. The average age of a professional driver is mid-50s. In the LGV side, I think, believe it or not, a third of our drivers are 60 or over, which is frankly scary, because, a third of the drivers, it's not, we could say the average at 55-ish is terrible. But the truth of the matter is, almost a third of the workforce could decide to retire tomorrow if they wanted. And that's a ticking time bomb. So we have to start changing the demographic, but we also want to give people a real opportunity. So that's there. And the final bit is again for our ADCs, and they'll either thank us for this or not. But we are Tam, absolutely agree with you. 60 is the new 40, and I say that as a 56-year-old. So the fourth part is about upskilling our ADCs. When I first started in the business as a driver, Royal Mail had its own driving instructors. Royal Mail trained people up to test standard. They were all released some years ago. For a number of years, we felt that our ADCs could take on some of that responsibility. And as part of the fourth phase of this agreement is about in the continuous professional development section. One of the aspects we want to progress with the business is progressing some driver coaches. It probably won't be all of them, but progressing some willing volunteers to ADI standards so that they can deliver the driver training on an ongoing basis. Because let's be honest, some of this, and the document's quite clear on this, the big numbers we're getting just now are because the government are part funding it, because they're doing so because of the crisis. That government funding won't be there forever, at which point using external providers becomes very expensive. So I want to be in a position where we have an in-house resource to progress driver training into the future. And I would like to think that our ADCs can take on that role should they wish to do so. I'm sure somebody will say, what am I getting for it? We ain't had that discussion yet, but look, if it's an additional skill and additional responsibility, then I'm sure you would expect us to ask the question. But getting Royal Mail to agree to the principle that ADIs can be progressed, so to some degree a career path for for ADCs to get to driving instructor standard. I think that's a big breakthrough with Royal Mail, because they've been very resistant to it up to now. And within this agreement, we've now got that caveat that they will work with us to try and progress that role too. So all in all, Scott, I think it's a pretty comprehensive package, and I'm absolutely delighted that we've got it. And I think our members will be absolutely delighted that we've finally got something, a training package, and not just one that's token, a training package that will train up a significant number of people to professional driver standard. I think it's very timely because of what's going on in the world, but it is. I think it's excellent because, listen, our professional driver roles are still something to aspire to. The reason we can, even in a year like this, we've recruited 670 people, is because generally we don't have any trouble recruiting, because Royal Mail terms and conditions are still industry leading. But I don't want to recruit from the external market. I want our Royal Mail members to have that opportunity to progress to these, these professional driver terms and conditions, and have the opportunity to go driving. Because, as you say, I was a driver. I've still got a Class 1 licence. I don't have a driver CPC. Maybe I'll nip myself onto a course. But I absolutely do think it's still a job that's absolutely worth aspiring to, and worth, and a valuable thing to progress to. And I want as many of our Royal Mail group members, it's not only people in Royal Mail, people in Relay and Parcel Force and other business units will also get the opportunity. I want them to have as many of our people to have that opportunity as possible.
Excellent. Well, we've got one. Oh, hello. Yes, we have got a comment from Colin Cox in Bring It On, and he's one of our ADCs. So I'll let you look into that as well. Fantastic set of three we've got there at YDC, I must say. Tam's covered off a point here about it's good to see the department bringing life to issues that have been raised at conference for years. And particularly, I just need to make that note that I think I and Dave Hutchinson, the area rep for Leeds, did move a motion to try and get the driver training for our area distribution because of the grandfather rights is obviously going away, and we need to fill that gap for area distribution. So this agreement encompasses that motion, so we can make change. The other point I wanted to pick up on, there's when people go into this training, so and I'm talking about the career path aspect, would they be looking at signing into something to say that on completion that they will have to pick up some sort of role like has been in custom in previous years? Because they don't explicitly say anything along those lines, but I'm fairly sure that will be a question that a lot of our members would want to know, is if they sign, will it cost them anything? And how it reads to me is very much that it won't cost you anything, but is there a disclaimer that if you decide not to pursue that career, that you might have to pay something back?
There is a contract, and the standard contract's been about since the professional driver agreement, Scott. So it's not new, and it's been part of the career path process. I mean, there will be further comms on this, I've got to say. So we are going to release comms. We're still working through some of the detail, but there will be comms on the selection process, how you apply, and we're very hopeful. People might be happy to hear that it won't be success factors. We've yet to finally bottom that out, but we will clarify all that. So when it will open, when it will close, who can apply, how you apply, what the criteria, the selection criteria will be, which will be in line with the career path agreement. The actual contract, though, the training contract, there is one, you're absolutely right. And that training contract does include a number of elements. So one, the individual doesn't have to contribute to the cost of the training initially. I say initially because the contract includes a funding formula for the training up to and including test, and then what happens if unfortunately you're unsuccessful in the testing. And a lot of people are. It's by no means a gimme that people pass. For those of us that have done an LGV test, it's a bit more arduous than the normal driving test, even though I believe some of the reversing elements have been taken out, which I have to say I think is a terrible idea. But it might be slightly easier just now. But people do fail the test. So there's then a funding formula on a second attempt and a third attempt, some of which are the business fund or part fund. So there is a contract. That contract, it might take you up on that, Colin. There is also a stipulation within the contract about the fact that if the business train you and get your license, and then you immediately decide to go and work for Tesco's, then you do have to pay the money back. And there is a criteria where there's a sort of flight path over a couple of years, where if you leave during the immediate 2 years after you've been trained, then on a sliding scale, you have to pay back some of the cost of the training. If you decide to take those skills that Royal Mail furnished you with and drive for somebody else, then there is a clause around that. So everybody does have to sign up to that contract. That contract does also say that you will be expected to take a professional driver's role when one is offered after the fact, after you're trained. And that's why it is very important. As part of the career path process, there is discussions about what the role means. Because, look, let's not kid ourselves. We don't want anybody going into it blind. And look, all of our professional drivers know what the role brings. And it can mean working across the full range of shifts. It can mean working across the weekends. And it can mean working on bank holidays. That's what the role includes. So, you know, it's dead easy for people to think, I quite fancy getting the licence, but then when the reality of the job hoves into view, people get less sure. So look, and I would say this to anybody that's thinking of applying, they are brilliant jobs. They are fantastic jobs, but they do, and they can mean all of those things. It can mean working shifts. It can mean working weekends. It can mean working on bank holidays. We try to make sure that pain is shared out, but that's part of the job. So if that's not something that your lifestyle could support, or that you feel wouldn't be for you, bear that in mind when you're thinking about applying. But if you are up for those things, if you can manage that, and I do think it's manageable for most people, not every day, but for most people we can manage it. But what you won't be guaranteed is a Monday to Friday early shift on either on MGV or LGV. I see Scott laughing there. You know, people have jewels in the yard over early shifts. You know, so if that's what you want, then that's going to be hard to deliver. But do the research, read up about it, talk to your reps, talk to your professional driver colleagues. And I still think these are fantastic jobs, well worth aspiring to.
Yeah, and to be fair, I'm laughing because the early shift, I think we've got 103 early shifts which cover 7-day working, and we have 2 vacancies on that shift. So, and we're still running with 50 to 60 vacancies. So that just shows you where the aspiration of drivers in situ are. So, I mean, funny enough, some of our external recruits have actually moved from likes of Asda and such after they got I think it was a 20% pay rise, and was asked, why did you come? And they said, well, we'll still pay more at Royal Mail. So although there's these fantastic figures bounding around, it just sort of shows where, I suppose, what Terry, your predecessor in the department, and you as an executive member sort of have involvement with that, where it was set with the PDA, the Professional Drivers Agreement in 2007, and with the pay rises and the short working week is just delivered now, you know, effectively £30,000 basic on 36 and a quarter hours. So, and that could actually be over 3, 4 or 5 day weeks, plus the overtime associated with it. So it's a great place to be in that regards. You did touch on some of the negatives. So some of the negatives for some people anyway, is the 7-day working, 364 days a year, because we do get Christmas off. You do grant us that one, does the company. But Christmas arrangements is something that comes around every year, and we'll be expecting the arrangements or the statement for that imminently, Davie.
Yeah,
it's an exceptional year, isn't it? It's an exceptional year.
I'll talk a bit about I know there's not just drivers on the call. You know, we've got all functions on the call. The Christmas arrangements, we've had a draft ready to go for some considerable time. There is an issue, and I think those of you that you know that probably monitor, press releases and that are maybe aware of this. I won't, in the current sort of, atmosphere of bonhomie with the company, I won't start pointing fingers or anything, but there is an issue where, in my view, the company didn't go to the regulator early enough with regards to the non-service day for New Year. So the non-service day for Christmas Day, because this is an atypical year. Christmas Day is a Saturday, New Year's Day is a Saturday, Boxing Day is a Sunday. So the actual festive days don't correspond with the bank holidays. So every few years we get one of these ones. And trust me, I just love these years. If there's one thing guaranteed to suck the joy out of Christmas, it's Christmas arrangements. So we've got this scenario. Christmas weekend is sorted. The regulator, though, hadn't granted the no service day for New Year's Day, which meant that initially the business was saying, the regulator says you have to do a 6-day week. So you're either working New Year's Day or the Monday. That's not what happened in 2010. And the last time this happened, in 2010, the regulator did grant an exemption for New Year's Day, and they have indicated and they've published their intention to do so again. But I mean, my personal view is the question should have been asked far earlier in the year, and this should all have been done and dusted. So we're hoping to have the Christmas arrangements out earlier, imminently. Although the regulator are saying because they have to consult, the final decision won't be from them won't be till the 13th of December, I think. But we want to get the Christmas arrangements out. On the network drivers agreement, we have submitted a draft to the company for their consideration on those weekends. And we have, I don't want to say what we've asked for because it wouldn't be fair, but we've asked for a different approach this year because this year is different. And I think that this year is a bit more challenging PDA-wise because you're right, the business, and you'll be happy to know the business don't want to run a network on Christmas Day, but they do want to run something on Boxing Day, which is the Sunday, and there's a question mark around New Year's Day. So we've put a proposition to the business on how to deal with that differently, and we're waiting on their response. But I do want to get it out there quickly, Scott, because I do want, in every function, I want to be able to plan. I want reps to be able to agree their Christmas arrangements, get people in place, allow people to enjoy additional reward if it's available, and get that done. So I think I can speak for Mark Balsh as well. We're desperate to get the Christmas arrangements out there. Ideally, we wanted them out there a month ago, but it's this bank holiday issue that's held things up. But on the driving one, I want to have the additional joint statement out there as well, Scott. The business have said that they are open to doing the traditional network joint statement, but my view is we have to be a bit inventive this year, and that's what we're trying to be.
Excellent. I'm conscious of the time, David, but if we can have a last 3 questions, sort of snappy, almost like a quick fire round, then when we can wrap it up. So, Colin, asking quickly if there is going to be a national training package rolled out for new drivers joining a VOC. Sam, when it comes up, is asking, will they be concentrating on external recruitment or offering training? I think we've kind of half covered that off throughout the session anyway, but Tim has asked, will the driver training be spread throughout the UK or in 1 or 2 places? There, I think that will cover most of the topics there. So, training package, where will the training be, and that last one, external.
Yeah, well, the training package, and listen, I have to say our ADCs do a fantastic job with regards to the training, and in all cases, You know, our ADCs are like, you know, they're like, trying to think of a good analogy. This one, don't be insulted. They're like the guard dog. You know, when we have agency drivers that come in, and especially now when we could have people passing a test that it can't reverse a vehicle because it's not part of the test. Our ADCs do a remarkable job of policing and ensuring that the drivers who do on board, to use the modern catchy term, are the required standard. And it's absolutely right they do that. And they also do that with external candidates who would come in. We do have a kind of nationally agreed sort of programme of 20 hours upskill training for people who would train up, who meet test standard, and through career path in the past, then, you know, we're very aware that passing the driving test doesn't make you fit to go out and drive. You do need familiarisation. You might need the body for a while. So we have got the 20-hour package. I actually believe that in YDC, you do a wee bit more than that. It's come to my attention. It's all right. I won't tell Andy. And that's great. So the section, you know, the continuous development section talks about setting up a working group to look at these things, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to set up a working group. Shelley will lead that. Shelley Banbury, who sort of leads on quite a lot of or almost all of the driving issues on my behalf, does an excellent job. So Shelley will lead on that. And we do want that kind of input on what a best practice, you know, upskilling programme would look like for the people who pass the test, because there's an extra step you have to go between passing the test and, you know, and jackknifing an Arctic blindside into, you know, the corner of a mail centre during peak. So that's still a task that we will rely on our ADCs to do, and we will want their input. With regards to the question around, are they going to go external? No, what we're doing here is about moving that emphasis from external to internal, and the document actually says that. And I know not everybody will have had a chance to read the document, you know, but it actually says, the last paragraph in the driver career path section says, the aspiration is that the vast majority of future vacancies will be filled internally as a result of the career path initiative. So I don't want another scenario where we need 500 drivers and we have to go to the market because we don't have internal candidates. I absolutely want the next time that we need drivers, we've got internal candidates because we've trained the people up. So no, I don't see, well, I'm not going to sit here and say to you there will never be another external candidate. There will be, of course there will. But the next time we need, you know, Scott needs 60 vacancies filled, I want those 60 candidates available, you know, internally, that we can progress and allow them to progress their career without having to go to the market for external drivers. I don't want people coming from Tesco's because our terms and conditions are better. I'm delighted to hear that they are, and I knew that they were. But I want you to have those opportunities, not Tesco's drivers. Which brings me again to I think the final question, Scott, was where will the training packages be offered? I want a geographic spread. I want so it wouldn't be 4 or 5 sites. It'll be we're looking for drivers almost everywhere, and especially remember this time it's not just about LGV, it's about MGV as well, and arguably all of not arguably, it's the truth. All of the career path, previous career path initiatives have been LGV only. We were adamant this time we had to train to MGV as well, because the old grandfather rights issue is getting a bit historic. You know, I think it was April the 1st, 1997. You had to have passed your test to be able to drive a 7.5 tonner on an ordinary license. Well, that's some considerable time. You know, so that's probably 24 years ago, or 25 years coming up. That's an awful long time. So, you know, there's not many there's no new starts in the company who can drive a 7.5 tonner without passing a test. So we need to train to MGV this time round. And my honest view is, I think there'll probably be more MGV training this time round than LGV. Now that'll depend to some degree on what people want. We've not put quotas on it, but I think there's probably quite a lot of people who fancy going 7.5 ton driving, but are maybe not necessarily confident to go Arctic driving. But time will tell. But it's absolutely key that we do it. So the faulty ground will be based on making sure that there is a geographic spread. I don't want any part of the country excluded, but let's be honest, if Scott's got 60 vacancies in YDC, then we might have to, he may get a few places because we've got a workload demand there. If we've got a workload demand in PRDC and Northwest DC, some of the big VOCs, they're sure to get places. But I don't want anybody excluded. Now, if we are, you also need to bear in mind, and this is, I'm just trying to be clear with people. If you're, if you're in a, where would I say? If you're in a DO in the rural Highlands, then you are going to have to understand that if you want this opportunity, it probably won't be on your doorstep. But I don't want anybody excluded from the training, from the training opportunities. But this is all still being worked on. So as soon as we know the numbers and the locations, we'll publicise it. As soon as we know how the application process is going to work. So is it going to be success factors? Is it going to be, a QR code? Is it going to be a link? Is it going to be something you can do from your mobile phone? Is it going to be something that you have to do through the workplace? Once we know all that, we'll publish it. Trust me, the business want to make a big noise about this now as well. I'm sure Simon Thompson's on the call right now saying how great it is that we've got a driver academy. So we're not pushing against any closed doors here, but we will publish all this. We'll make sure that you know how to do it, when to do it, where to do it, and you can get your name in the hat. We'll also tell you what would exclude you. And, unfortunately, if you've got a drink driving, message sitting on your license, I'm sorry, we ain't going to be able to include you at this time. So there are some things that are part of current agreements that would exclude people. But listen, an awful lot of people are going to get an opportunity here, and we will make sure I've already got a standard response that's going out from the department to the hundreds of inquiries we're getting saying, we will tell you how, where, when, why, if, everything that you need to know, we will publish so that you can be part of this opportunity if you want to be. Doesn't mean I can guarantee you'll get on. I suspect there'll be more than 500 candidates. Some people may be disappointed. There will be a selection process, but an awful lot of people are going to get an opportunity. So we'll make sure you don't miss it.
Excellent. Well, I've got to say, David, thank you very much for your time. I know we've run over slightly, but I do think the members appreciate you putting that extra time to answer those last few points. So I think the best thing for members, particularly in Leeds, is that they sort of subscribe to our social media pages. In fact, anyone can subscribe to that. We are sitting at 399 subscribers on YouTube, so I'd like to tick over to that 400 because my OCD is playing hell. So, yeah, contact your local rep, and certainly in Leeds, contact us, get into the WhatsApp broadcast, and then we'll share that information when Davie's department sends it out, and we'll certainly maximise participation and uptake in that. So again, Davie, thank you very much for your time tonight. That leaves us then to conclude with the closing credits. So remember, unity is strength. Thanks for watching.